I pee on everything. Not literally. Internet protocol and everything. That was the mantra of Vint Cerf, the father of the internet, co-creator of the internet. That was his mantra 25 years ago that talked about his vision for the future. And it was a radical thought at the time because most computers back in the mid-90s weren't even connected to the internet. But Vint had a really dramatic way of expressing his vision. So at meetings and conferences, he would walk up to the podium, and he always wore a three-piece suit, typically, and he'd take off his jacket, he'd take off, the tie and the vest, and he'd get down to this t-shirt. It looked a lot like that. And he would go on and tell about the future where everything was a node on the internet. And this was the guy that wrote the protocol back in the late 60s, right? That had the vision walking around Berkeley campus. So he knew what he was talking about. But it was a big thought. But it got a lot of us thinking, and it got me thinking specifically, literally, about kitchens. And it led me on a 20-year vision, or quest, I should say, almost obsession, that led me to this point. And I still remember the exact moment, standing in our kitchen in Northern Virginia, 1997. I don't remember the exact date. I'm good with dates, but that one has escaped me. But it looked a lot like this, right? And I was sitting there looking at the Formica counter, or hard surface, whatever it was. And I just had this thought that it was all going to change based on Vint's vision. Everything in that kitchen was going to look different. But I didn't know how. Think again, this was 97, 98 by that time. And soon after, we moved to Germany, and I filled in a couple more puzzle pieces in my thinking. And it started when we went out to look for a place to live. So if you've ever lived in Germany, most people take their kitchens with them. So as I got to the first apartment to look at, there was no kitchen. It was wires, it was plumbing sticking out of the wall, and it was a little mind-boggling because we were only going to be there for a year and a half maybe, and I wasn't going to buy a kitchen. So we kept looking at places all day, and we finally got to a house where there was a kitchen, and I was so excited, and the landlord was there, and he asked me if we wanted to rent the kitchen in addition to the rest of the house, and I said, sure. So it came as a package deal, the house and a kitchen. What a concept. But it looked a lot like this, and the second thing that really hit me was it was very compact. So we had come from the big American-style kitchen where you shop for a week, right? And most of your food's not fresh after that week, and you end up throwing a lot out. The German way at the time we really became accustomed to was you shopped for the day, right? You shopped, based on a couple of days maybe at the most. And things were much fresher. I still remember the first time we bought chicken and it had feathers on it. Talking about connecting to food, right? So different, based on the American experience. Well, fast forward to today. Where are we, right? We've heard a lot the last couple of days about everything now in the kitchen is a node on the internet. Vint Cerf was right. It took how many years, right? 25, maybe more. But the crazy thing is, most of our kitchens still look like that one I showed you in the 1990s, right? We really haven't had a major breakthrough in the design of the kitchen. And I realized about 10 years ago that the reason that there's a lag is we really need to get to this inflection point where everything changes, right? And you start to think about things differently. And the last time we went through that was in the 1920s. So think about what we had at that era. We had electricity, we had the telephone, and we had the automobile, all coming into mainstream society in about a 10 or 15 year period. And it radically changed, it transformed how and where we lived at the time. So it was really the birth of the modern kitchen, right? Modern appliances. We no longer can food in our kitchen. We went to the store in our car and we bought it at a self-service grocery store, which was another big innovation of the day. And so it really set out, I think, a pattern of about 80 years of how we design and use space. And it really set off a social revolution, specifically for women, because it saved labor, right? It freed up time. It led to a freer life to do other things. So if you think about that, are we at a similar point in time where everything's going to change? And if we are, what does it look like? Well, the model I believe we're going to get to, and we've heard this the last couple of days, it's going to be more of a kitchen as a service. Think about what's important to us today, right? What's the most important thing? Time, right? Our time and convenience is the currency of today. And access is more important for so many of us than ownership. And think about the emergence of the sharing economy the last 10 years since the smartphone came out, right? We can get just about anything on demand. I mean, I could get Uber here in 2 minutes, and we could all go around the block, but that doesn't mean it has to be my vehicle, right? There's so many parts of our lives now that are impacted by that. So what do I think it looks like then when we really think about the kitchen and this comment from Vint, or mantra of the kitchen is a node on the network, right? I think it starts to look a little bit more like this, right? It's very, very different. It's not isolated. Most of our kitchens, I would say, in the past 20 or 30 years have been analog. This one gets much more digital. It's connected. And I've come up with 5 C's to try to describe it. So let me go through each one. First, it is very compact, right? If I'm living in New York City, where it's $6 a square foot to rent, why would I ever store any food? Store it in the cloud, right? On demand. And you think about the space saving. I can take 50 square feet out of a kitchen. That's 10% of my rent in New York City alone. So we still oversize, we supersize things, but it's going to change. They're going to become much more compact. The second C is the configurability, and this has 2 pieces of it. First, there is the ability, I think, as a kitchen as a service, it's going to be much more of a plug-and-play model, right? A little bit like what I saw in Germany 20 years ago. We're going to be able to upgrade kitchens much more easily based on technology. The average life cycle today for a kitchen, I think we've heard this the last couple of days, it's about 15 years. So think about that. With the rapid diffusion of innovation of technology into the kitchen, 15 years is, it's a lifetime, right? Think of cars that are 15 years old now, right? Even when I rent a car and there's no camera to back up, it's like we forgot how to back up, right? We get used to things. So the configurability is about upgrading, but it's also about the personalization of a space. And I think this is, again, where the cloud comes in, is we're going to start to create a personalized experience. And the kitchen's going to start to get to know us, right? It's going to make us healthier, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But over time, that profile is stored in the cloud. Maybe we get to a point when we move, instead of taking the physical kitchen with us like we did in Germany, we take our profile with us because it knows us. The third C, because I talked about the cloud, is the connectivity, right? And we've heard a lot about that the last few days. Here's one of the challenges. All these apps, right? It's almost like we're getting to the point where it's just too much. Right? How many apps do we have on our phone? I had one today from a vendor that's here. I won't even say who it is. I didn't even know I had it on my phone, but I had seen it. And so I had them describe to me what it is. So we're inundated with apps. I think what's going to change, maybe this is a 6th C I just came up with, it will be much more curated, right? When I get the kitchen as a service, I think it's going to tell me what I need to be looking at, what my interface should be to the connectivity. Final C is commerce enablement. And I don't just mean things get delivered, as we've heard a lot about in a way that's making me change my behavior. I mean that we're going to be able to get deliveries in a way that I don't have to change any behavior. We're going to orient our houses and our kitchens so that we can receive things a lot like we did 100 years ago. If you not any of us remember that, I almost said that, but hopefully none of us remember that. But we've read about it, right? Ice came into the house, milk came into the house. All these things got delivered. Some of that's back to the future. So as we design new living spaces, as we do with our company, Urbaneer, we're thinking about how do we get things delivered in a way that makes it easy for people. So that's what it looks like. Now the big question is, so what, right? What does it really do for us? I think we're at a point like we were in the 1920s when our quality of life is enhanced, our well-being is improved. I don't think the kitchen goes away. We've talked a little bit about that the last couple of days. I think it just changes. I think it becomes more a hub for well-being. So the social elements, the economic, the environmental impact. But more importantly, I think there's a wellness component. I think that's where wellness gets delivered into the kitchen. And think about personalized meals. We've heard about that the last few days. Think about how the kitchen keeps us healthier. Does it elevate our whole capacity, just as it did in the past when we saw the last change? So change comes with challenges, right? And these are 3 that I've identified. The first is if we have a shorter lifespan of the kitchen, we can't just put them in landfills. That's just not even up for discussion. We need to have more of a cradle-to-cradle versus cradle-to-grave mindset. What I mean by that is that plug-and-play capability. We can update, we can take things out. Maybe the kitchen at the end of its life is a solution for affordable housing. Think about the housing crisis today. 5 million unit shortage in the United States. 35 million worldwide. 3.5 million units short in California alone. We need to drive innovation to solve that problem. So that's maybe the flip side of it as a challenge, right? There's an opportunity there. The second thing is this plug-and-play interoperability. If we think about manufacturers of cabinetry and manufacturers of appliances, to my knowledge, there isn't any standard around how those components come together and work together. It's really a one-off solution each time, so we've got to solve that. The third thing is data standards. What we have today in the smart home environment is the if this, then that mantra or framework. It's really 1 + 1 = 3. We need a 1 + 1 = 10. We need these smart devices to work together in a way that we've never seen before, and they need to trade data in a way that's a standard. Again, it's all about people, right? We've got to put people back into the model and help them live better through that. All right, I want to leave you just with a couple of thoughts. If the kitchen as a service is a model, as I'm suggesting, does it get to a subscription? I've touched on that, but what would that look like? It is $100 a month? Is it $200, $300? Is it variable based on how I want to live? I think it's a big question. It's a business model question. I think it's going to challenge a lot of people in the industry. And my last point is, who's the brand that's going to own the kitchen as a service? The automotive industry, I think, has really figured it out. If you followed Volvo at all, they have a new, they advertise it as subscribe to the new XC40. What does that mean? For a monthly fee, it includes my payment, maintenance, insurance, and I can upgrade the car once a year. So they've figured it out. So the question is, who's going to be the brand for the kitchen as a service in the future? Thank you very much.